शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नम ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Isopanisad bhaktisashtri. In the last class, we finished the discussion on the third section in the series of the Isopanisad verses, which was dealing with what is the right Vidya, and the terms Vidya and Avidya, which come in mantra 9, 10, 11, they have different meanings in different contexts. So in the flow of the Isopanishads, we saw that invocation till mantras 3 speak about how one should know the Ishavasya principle and live in harmony. What is the advantage of living in harmony and disadvantage of living in disharmony with the Ishavasya principle? Then from mantras 4 to 8, Ishwar has to be known, and that Ishwar can be known by spiritual vision. And later on, the transcendental attributes of the Ishwar were discussed in mantra 8. In the third section, the same Ishavasya principle to know, we need to acquire Vidya, knowledge. So what is the right Vidya and what is the right Upasana? So the right Vidya and the right Upasana is in this series. Mantra 9 to 11 spoke about the right Vidya. And now today we will be beginning from mantra 12 to 14. This is the next section of the Isopanishads where the right Upasana is discussed. So what is the right Upasana will be mentioned in mantra 12. So mantra 12 is a long and elaborate discussion. Maybe we will take it in 2 classes and try to discuss this. So Vidya and Avidya, just like in mantras 9 to 11 had different meanings in different context. So here it will come Sambhuti and Asambhuti. So in one sense, the structure is very similar to mantras 9 to 11. In terms of the logical and philosophical understanding and structure, mantras 9 to 11 and mantras 12 to 14 have similarity. There it is, 3 verses. Here also it is 3 verses. There it is having different meanings in 9, 10, 11. of the terms Vidya and Avidya. Here also, Sambhuti will have different meanings, again, logically and philosophically, in mantras 12, 13, and 14. So let us go to mantra 12. Andam tama pravishyanti ye sambhutim upasate tato bhuya iva te tamo yatu sambhutyamrata. So there it was andam tama pravishyanti ye avidyam upasate tato bhuya iva te tamo ye tu avidyayam rata. So only the term vidya and avidya have been replaced by sambhutim and asambhutyam. Let's look into the translation. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods, ye sambhutim upasate, enter into the darkest region of ignorance, andham tama pravishyanti, and still more so, tato bhuya ivatetamo, do the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. Yatu sambhutyam rata. So what is the connection between mantra 12 and the previous set of 3 mantras? This mantra speaks of those who are on the spiritual path or religious path enunciated in the Vedas, how they can get deviated from the Supreme Lord. If we don't have the right conception of the absolute truth, although we are on the spiritual path, we can get deviated. So this mantra speaks about that. Those who get deviated on the path of religion away from the real goal are talked about. They're talked about in these set of verses. So now let's, before we go into mantra 12, look into the overview. Mantra 12, Asambhuti takes to darkness and Sambhuti takes to greater darkness. It's very interesting. Those who are engaged in avidya, it takes to darkness. There also does the same thing. And those who are engaged in vidya, it takes to deeper darkness. So similarly here, Asambhuti takes to darkness and Sambhuti takes to deeper, greater darkness. So here the terms Sambhuti and Sambhuti, what they mean? Asambhuti refers to something non-eternal. And Sambhuti refers to something that is eternal. Imagine, something which is eternal also can take us to greater darkness. Now, mantra 13 tells that Sambhuti gives one result, Asambhuti gives another result. Now, this is an obvious contradiction to the previous verse. But here it is saying that this is one result. So, Sambhuti takes to darkness and Asambhuti takes to greater darkness. It's obvious contradiction. But here in mantra 13, it is said Sambhuti and Asambhuti give different results. It's a complete contradiction of mantra 12. Now, mantra 13 says Sambhuti and Asambhuti together grant immortality. Again, obvious contradiction to mantra 13. Mantra 13 said, this gives one result, that, and Sambhuti gives one result, Asambhuti gives another result, but together they give mortality, it is saying. So this mantra 14 again is a contradiction to mantra 13. So how do we resolve this contradiction? So in mantra 12, Asambhuti refers to the worship of demigods, which keeps one in darkness, because it keeps one in the material world only. And Sambhuti refers to so-called knowledge of the absolute truth. Just as in mantra 9, Vidya was so-called knowledge. So-called Vedavada Rata Parthas, or the Maya Aprita Gyanas, or the materialistic scientists, philosophers who have material knowledge. Prabhupada is extending that in today's context. In the Vedic context, it is specifically referring to Vedavadarata and Maya Paritagyan. So here, the worship of impersonal absolute truth leads to greater darkness. We will see how the impersonal worship of the absolute truth leads to greater darkness. That we will see. Okay. So this is just the flow and the overview from mantras 12 to 14. Now the Upanishads are terse. That's why they are very difficult to understand, because they cater to the Gyanis. And the Gyanis like to do a lot of intellectual exercise. There are some games which are very gross. There is a gross use of the physical energy, like boxing, you know, and some other like sports, where there is a lot of physical, ability required, weightlifting or whatever it is. Of course, there is mental ability also, but physical is also more important there. And there are some games which are, more to do, not with the physical ability, but with the intellectual abilities. It's an intellectual game, just like chess. So similarly, uh, in the paths, Krishna, based on the different mentalities of the seekers, he has given different paths so that ultimately everyone can come nearer to the absolute truth. So the Ashtanga Yoga, it requires a lot of physical abilities in, doing austerities, tapasya. The Gyanis, they do a lot of intellectual austerity in the form of studying the Upanishads, studying the Vedanta Sutra. So Upanishads are catering to the, these intellectual Gyanis, and Krishna is giving them some, uh, some kind of, you can say, uh, stuff, intellectual stuff by which they on which they can ponder. So that's why the Gyanis always are absorbed in deep contemplation. Oh, what is the meaning of this mantra? What is the meaning of that mantra? There's contradiction. So they do this kind of vimarshan. It is called as vimarshan. So usually what the case is that, it leads to mental speculation of what Brahman is. That will come to when we discuss, the second part of the purport in today's class or tomorrow when we discuss. So here, in mantra 12, Sambhuti refers to demigods and Sambhuti refers to the impersonal absolute truth. And Sambhuti gives one result, Sambhuti gives another result. So in mantra 13, Sambhuti refers to anything other than the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It includes both demigod worship, impersonal absolute truth. So similarly in Vidya and Avidya, there, Avidya included both the terms in mantra, 9. So similarly in mantra 13, anything other than the absolute truth, including the demigod worship and the impersonal worship of the absolute truth. That gives one result. And then the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sambhuti. That's what mantra 13 speaks, gives another result. So that again, this contradiction is resolved. And mantra 14, Sambhuti and Asambhuti together grant immortality. Here, knowledge of the material world and knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's what the term Sambhuti, Asambhuti refer in mantra 14. Okay. Now let's come to the overview of mantra 12. So Prabhupada in paragraphs 1 to 3 speaks about even demigod and rishis misunderstand the absolute truth to be impersonal. It's very interesting. Huh? We might not be aware about it, but Prabhupada will bring out in the purport that how even demigods have a misconception or misunderstanding of the absolute truth. And then demigod worshippers stay in the dark material world, paragraph 4 to 7. So maybe these two themes we will cover today. And in the next class, we will cover this impersonalists who mislead people, go to the darkest regions of hell. Okay. Fine. Up till now, anything? We have just taken a brief overview of mantra 12. But up till now, anyone has any questions, any clarifications? No. Okay. Fine. So let's go now to the purport of Prabhupada. Now, before we go to the purport, I would like to, go into the concept of these terms, terminology, Sambhuti and Asambhuti. First, I will take that and then Understanding the terms Asambhuti and Sambhuti. We need to understand these terms because how many of you are familiar with these terms, Sambhuti and Asambhuti, or how many of you are familiar at least? Let me know how many of you are familiar with these terms, Sambhuti and Asambhuti. No. How many I've never heard about this term, Sambhuti and Asambhuti? Raise your hands. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, others have heard this term. Okay. So that's why in Vedic, philosophical definitions have to be understood. What are the terminologies used? Without understanding the terminologies, it's very difficult to understand the subject. So let's go to the understanding of the terms of Asambhuti and Sambhuti. The Sanskrit word Asambhuti refers to those who have no independent existence. So this Prabhupada also will define in his purport. Sambhuti is the absolute personality of Godhead who is absolutely independent of everything. So Asambhuti refers to who have no independent existence. And Sambhuti is absolute personality of Godhead who is absolutely independent of everything. According to Vedanta Sutra, Sambhuta is the source of birth and sustenance, as well as the reservoir that maintains after annihilation. So, in other words, Krishna. So, this is as per the Vedanta Sutra. What is Sambhuta? Sambhuta is the source of birth and sustenance, as well as the reservoir that remains after annihilation. And in other words, it means Krishna. So, in the Madhuri Kadamani, Vishwanath Chakra Thakur, especially when he discusses the second offense to the holy name, to consider the demigods to be equal to or independent of the name of Vishnu, there he does a very elaborate analysis of the ontology of consciousness. So there he divides it into two categories, dependent consciousness and independent consciousness. And the independent consciousness are Ishvara. They are called as Ishvara. And in that, he classifies them into two categories. Ishwar, who is not in touch with Maya, and Ishwar, who is in touch with Maya. And the dependent consciousness are all the demigods, the jivas, Brahma, all. They are dependent because they're not independent consciousness. They are dependent on the supreme consciousness. Just like the sunlight, the light of the sunlight is dependent on the sun. So there he does a very elaborate analysis. And similarly, the term is very, very clear. Asambhuti means those who have no independent existence, and Sambhuti means that he is absolutely independent of everything. So as I was mentioning, dependent consciousness and independent consciousness. And independent consciousness are called as Ishvara. And within that, there is two divisions. One is those who are not in touch with Maya, and that which is in touch with Maya. So anyone knows what are the examples of those who are in touch with Maya and not in touch with Maya, even in that independent consciousness? Okay, one has been raised. Yes, Mataji. Yes. I've unmuted you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, Prabhuji, let me know if I'm correct. This is according to my small understanding. I just remembered Lord Shiva.
Yes.
Can we put
Shiva
that?
is in
Can
touch
you
with
help
Maya
me?
because for the creation purpose he comes into touch. And what is independent consciousness? Those who are not in touch with Maya. Independent consciousness. Yes, Mataji, you only can answer.
Sorry, Prabhuji. Maybe Lord Krishna himself.
Not maybe, it is. So Lord Krishna, including Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Shirodakshaya Vishnu, all the avatars, They don't come in touch with Maya. Although they can come in the world of Maya, they don't come in touch with it. So they refer to all the Vishnu and the Vishnu avatars. Krishna from Krishna and all the avatars. They include all that. So that is how we can understand these terms Sambhuti and Asambhuti. Now my question to you all is, according to this third statement, according to Vedanta Sutra, Sambhuta is the source of birth, sustenance, as well as the reservoir that remains after annihilation. So in other words, Krishna. Anyone can think about any verse as a scriptural quotation to substantiate this statement. Anyone can think of verses from the Gita, Bhagavatam, that Sambhuta is the source of birth and sustenance as a reservoir that remains after annihilation. Anyone can think of any verse as a quotation to prove this statement? Anyone? Mohan Rup Sham Prabhuji. Hmm?
No idea.
No idea. Okay, so we'll only quote then. Source of birth and sustenance. Aham Adi Bijanam Pradapita. Okay. Yeah, please don't type. If you have to answer, raise your hands. We would like to hear from you. एतद्योनिनि भूतानि सर्वानित्य उपधारय अहम कृष्णस्य जगत प्रभव प्रलयस्तथा. After speaking about the Bhairanga Shakti in 7.4 and the Tatastha Shakti in 7.5, Krishna in 7.6, Etad, these two, Yonini, source. I am the source. And Aham Krishnasya Jagata Prabhava Pralayastata. I am the origin and the dissolution of the whole universe. And the maintainer also, it is included. So this fits in exactly the statement of definition given of Sambhuti in this, Vedanta Sutra. Another verse, Aham Krishnasya Prabhavo Matta Sarvam Pravartate Iti Matva Bhajante Mam Bhuda Bhava Samanvita. I am the source of everything. Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. Due to me, everything operates. Matta Sarvam Pravartate. Convinced of this knowledge, the intelligent person endowed with love worships me. So here it includes everything. Aham Sarvasya. I am the source of everything, means I am the source of all the demigods. I am the source of all avatars. I am the source of creation, maintenance, and destruction. So this is another reference you can give from the Gita. And then Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamakam Kalpakshaya Punastani Kalpado Vrisrijamyaham. O son of Kunti, Kaunteya, all the things that enter, all things will enter my Prakriti. Sarva Bhutani Mamaka Prakritim Yanti. At the time of destruction, Kalpakshaya. At the time of creation, Kalpado, again I create everything. Punastani Vishujyam Aham. So he is the source of creation and destruction. This is Sambhuti. So this is how the absolute truth is defined even in the Gita. So we should know that these Gita verses are defining, the Sambhuti here. Okay, so now we'll come to this section, paragraphs 1 to 3, that even demigods and rishis misunderstand the absolute truth to be impersonal. So let's read now. So who will volunteer to read? Let us first go to paragraph 1. Yeah, 1 and 2. Who will read paragraphs 1 and 2? Raise your hands. Otherwise, I'll have to tell. Yes, Mohan Rup Sham Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. The Sanskrit word Asambhuti refers to those who have no independent existence. Sambhuti is the absolute personality of Godhead, who is absolutely independent of everything. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.2, the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna states, Na me vidu suragana prabhavam na magarashyaha agamadiri devanam maga magareshinam sarvashaham. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences. For in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. Thus Krishna is the origin of the powers delegated to demigods, great sages, and mystics. Although they are endowed with great powers, these powers are limited, and thus it is very difficult for them to know how Krishna himself appears by his own internal potency in the form of a man.
Yeah, here, hold on 1 minute. Now, Prabhupada begins his commentary by defining what is a Sambhuti, who have no independent existence. This already I showed in the slide. And Sambhuti as absolutely independent of everything. And to substantiate this statement, Prabhupada gives this quotation that how the demigods and these great sages, Krishna is the origin. Aham adiri devana. That means all these are asambhuti. They don't have independent existence. And because he is the source of everyone, not only devas, rishis and everything, sarvasha. So to prove this definition, Prabhupada is giving the quotation from 10.2. Now, neither demigods can understand the absolute personality of Godhead. Even that statement, to prove it, we can refer to this verse. But here, Prabhupada, in this context, to refer to what is asambhuti and asambhuti, he has quoted 10.2. Okay, let's go to the next paragraph. Now, further, Prabhupada, how, the demigods also cannot understand the absolute truth. That point, he starts covering in the next paragraph. Yes, Prabhuji, continue reading.
Many philosophers and great rishis or mystics try to distinguish the absolute from the relative by the tiny brain power. This can help them reach the negative conception of the absolute without realizing any positive trace of the absolute. Definition of the absolute by negation is not complete. Such negative definitions lead one to create a concept of one's own. Thus, one imagines that the absolute must be formless and without qualities. Such negative qualities are simply the reversals of a relative material qualities and are therefore also relative. By conceiving of the absolute in this way, one can at the most reach the impersonal effulgence of the God known as Brahman, but one cannot make further progress to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead.
Yeah, correct. Continue this third paragraph.
Such mental speculators do not know that the absolute personality of Godhead is Krishna, that the impersonal Brahman is the glaring effulgence of his transcendental body, or that the Paramatma, the supersoul, is all-pervading plenary representation. Nor do they know that Krishna as his eternal form with its transcendental qualities of eternal bliss and knowledge. The dependent demigods and great sages imperfectly consider him to be a powerful demigod, and they consider the Brahman effulgence to be the absolute truth. But the devotees of Krishna, by dint of their surrendering unto him in unalloyed devotion, can know that he is the absolute person and that everything emanates from him. Such devotees continuously render loving service unto Krishna, the fountainhead of everything.
Everything. Now, here, Prabhupada in this paragraph mentions that how these philosophers and rishis, they cannot know him, which is already quoted, Name Vidu Suragana. And Prabhupada mentions that the path of the Gyan path is basically the path of negation. I know this, I hope you know this path of neti neti, not this, not this. Trying to conceive the absolute in terms of negation, what it is not. So what it is not will not lead to what it is. It's just a negation of the absolute, which will not lead to the positive information of the absolute. So in this, we discussed, if you remember, and I'll again bring that up. So to make it more clear, I'll have to, yes, yeah, here. So the impersonalism is there in the scriptures. It is transitional, but it is not final. So in the Karma Kanda, where there is, there is religious materialism, there is attraction to the material forms. There's attraction to the material forms. There the role model is Indra. the beauty of Indra, the beauty of Indra's abode, and the Apsaras there, So there is glorification in the Vedas. So there is that role model, and there is attraction to the material forms so to attain that goals. So when one is exhausted with the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas, understanding that even the heavenly planets are material, and he understands that I am eternal and my existence is eternal. So I have to have an eternal goal. I have to have an eternal goal. So then he begins his life, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So one who is done with the material sense gratification activities, then the Jnana Kanda portion of the Vedas is given where there is, self-realization which is spoken of. Now the Upanishads are the Jnana Kanda portion of the Vedas. So Upanishads seem impersonal while going from the material form to the spiritual form, because from here we are trying to go. We are now in the below the y-axis. There is attraction to material forms, but here there is the zero axis where there is negation of the material forms. So this negation of the material forms is ultimately to realize the positive forms. So, we want to negate it so that we are not attracted to it and we, get attracted. So while we are on the zero axis, it doesn't mean that just by the process of neti, by negating the material forms, we can realize the positive forms. No, ultimately the Lord has a positive form and the positive forms are described. But just the negation of the negative will not lead to the realization of the positive form. So that's the point Srila Prabhupada is trying to make here. Such negative definitions lead one to create a concept of one's own. Thus, one imagines that the absolute truth must be formless and without qualities. Like we discussed also, if you remember, Sarvata Pani Padam Tat Sarvata Akshi Shiro Mukam. This verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Let me take that as a small example to explain it. So this is 13.19, I think. 14. Sarvata pani padam tad sarvata akshi shiromukam sarvata shruti malloke sarvam avrita tishtati. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, head and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the Supersoul exists, pervading everything. So, when we hear this verse, sarvata pani padam tad, so in the material conception, our hands and legs are only existing here. And we don't know any being whose hands and legs are spread everywhere. So when the Jnanis, this is the Jnana section of the Bhagavad Gita, the 13th chapter. So when the Jnanis, are negating the material forms, because the material forms cause attraction and they cause bondage, and they are negating and they are trying to understand the absolute in terms of negation. So they might conclude, oh, the absolute truth is also formless, because they don't have a realization or understanding that how can it be possible that there is a personality who has his hands and legs spread everywhere. So by mental speculation one can come to this kind of a conclusion. So that's what Prabhupada is trying to see here. Leads one to create a concept of one's own and thus imagines the absolute to be formless. So such qualities are simply the reversals of relative material qualities and therefore also relative. They are also relative. Understand? So by conceiving like this, one can at most reach the impersonal effulgence of God known as Brahman. Now, my question is, please hear carefully, based on the definition I gave of asambhuti and sambhuti, what is Brahman then? Whether it comes in sambhuti or asambhuti, and you have to answer also why. Who will answer this? Dwarkadish Prabhuji, one hand has been raised. That too after some time. Yes, Dwarkadish Prabhuji. I just want to check whether how attentively you all are hearing. Yes, Dwarkadish Prabhuji.
Hare Prabhu. Brahman also coming from Supreme Lord, so it is not, it's also absolute.
Okay, first you tell me whether it is Sambhuti or Asambhuti.
Asambudhi.
Asambhuti, why?
I mean, not in touch with Maya. Maya independent from Maya.
Yeah.
So it is absolute is another aspect of supreme absolute truth. So it cannot come under Maya. It has to be independent.
Anyone else would like to say something? Yes, Devhuta Kapil Prabhuji. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, it comes under, in this context, it comes under Asambhuti because it cannot have an independent existence without.
Yes, Brahman doesn't have an independent existence. Brahmano pratishtaham. Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita 14.7. Yes, yes. So that's what I wanted to know. Now, in the third paragraph, Prabhupada speaks about how these speculators who speculate like that based on negation cannot know the absolute personality of Krishna, that the Brahman, impersonal Brahman, is a Kanti of the Lord. It is, the glaring effulgence of the Lord. And nor they can know that the Paramatma is all-pervading plenary representation. So there, Sarvata Pani Padam Tat, that is the super soul. He is all-pervading. So, yeah, I'll take up questions. Just let me finish. And they cannot know this, nor they can know that Krishna is the eternal form and transcendental qualities. So, if you think that the Upanishads only are dealing with the zero axis and you get stuck here, then that's a problem. That's why tato bhuyatayamo ya asambhutim ya sambhutyam rata. So if you come to the conclusion that the absolute truth is impersonal, then that is, leading to greater darkness. That is a point being made. But ultimately, if you don't realize that the Lord is having positive form, then you have not attained the goal. So that's why it has been mentioned in this verse. So here, Prabhupada makes a very remarking statement. And I don't know whether you have noted. Prabhupada says that nor do they know that Krishna has a the dependent demigods and the great sages, that is this what they are referred, Suragana and Maharshiyas, imperfectly considered him to be a powerful demigod. And they consider the Brahman effulgence to be the absolute truth. So please think about the statement of Prabhupada. Prabhupada is saying that even the demigods and the great sages living in the higher planet systems, they think Vishnu is a powerful demigod. And they consider what? That the Brahman effulgence is to be the absolute truth. So you know that it is there in the Krishna book, first chapter, and the Bhagavatam, that when there were a lot of powerful Asuric rulers on planet Earth, Mother Earth took the form of a cow and went to Brahma and described her lamentation. So Brahma, along with the Devtas, went to the Shir Sagar. And on the bank of Shir Sagar, although you see that picture in the Krishna book, that there is Garbhodakshay Vishnu with Lakshmi massaging her lotus feet, but actually they cannot see Shirdakshay Vishnu. So Brahma and all the Devtas together offer what is called as the Purusha Shukta prayers. And there is no response. But ultimately when Brahma sits in meditation, then there's a message transmitted in the heart of Brahma. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavai. And the message is that soon the Supreme Personality Godhead is going to incarnate and all the Devatas are told to take birth in the family of Yadus. So, although whenever the Devatas are in trouble, they ultimately go to Brahma and then Brahma takes them to Vishnu. Even the Devatas have a conception that Vishnu is also one supreme demigod. And Vishnu also derives his power from the impersonal Brahman or the Brahman effulgence. He's an aspect of the impersonal Brahman of the absolute truth. Even the Devatas have this, and the great rishis who are residing in the higher realms. So if they have, then what to speak of these tiny living beings on planet Earth? So we should understand, and it's only devotee by surrendering he can understand this. So this is the point, and we can refer to this verse also. So this is the point here, and I would like to just take through some slides to explain this, and then I will take up the questions that even demigods and rishis misunderstand. And the same verse I'm quoting, Aham name vidur surgana prabhavam cha maharshaya aham adiri devana maharshinam cha sarvasha. The devatas and the great rishis do not know my extraordinary powers. Na vidu me prabhavam. Since I am the source of the devatas, aham adiri devanam, and the great rishis, maharshinam cha sarvasha. And here also it is mentioned how the devatas are bewildered. Muyanti yat suraya janmadayasya tonvayaditaraschateshu abhigna swarat tene brahmridayadi kavaye muyanti yat suraya tejo varim vridam yata vinamayo yatra trisargo mrisha dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. Let us meditate on the absolute truth Krishna. This is Vishwanath Chakra Thakur's translation. Satyam param dhimahi, who is the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction of this universe. Janmadhyasya, and as the material and the efficient cause. Anvayat itara, since he is the only knower of all objects. Cha arteshu abhigna, and the only independent being, Swarat. So this is the definition of what? This is the definition of what? Let us see, guess how many devotees are hearing attentively. Yes, Parthsarthi Prabhuji. Where are you? Yes, Parthsarthi Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yes,
Abhijna
but
and
according
Swarat.
to the terms used in the Isopanishads, what is the term?
Abhijna, Swarat.
No. Yes, Priya Mataji. Where are you? Yes, Priya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Asambhuta.
No. Sambhuti. Sambhuti definition is given here. Why do we forget that Prabhupada is defined here? No independent existence, and one who is absolutely independent, Swarat, is Sambhuti. So this word Janmadhyasya, Janmadhyasya, sorry. Janmadhyasya to Anvayaditraschatishu Abhigna Swarat is definition of Sambhuti, who revealed the Vedas to Brahma within his mind. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kave, who is difficult to understand even for the learned. Muyanti Yat Suraya, whose body is thought to be made of matter due to illusion, just as one mistakes fire, earth, and water and earth for each other. Tejo Varim Radam Yata Vinamayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisham. So they understand that the Lord's body is not transcendental. Avajananti Mam Muda Manushim Tanumashita, and who negates all false arguments regarding existence by possessing a transcendental, inconceivable form, and by the strength of devotees experiencing him through his Swarup Shakti. Though, no, it is through his Swarup Shakti. So Prabhupada has made that point that the devotees only by rendering service to the Lord can understand him. They cannot understand otherwise. So this is another quotation about it. And then in the 12th canto, there is this famous verse in the last chapter where Sut Goswami speaks about how the Devatas also cannot understand. Suta Vacha Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Maruta Suvanti Divyastave Vede Sangapada Kramopanishader Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogina Yasyantam na Vidhu Suragana Devaya Tasme Namaha. Sut Goswami said, Suta said, Suta Vacha, unto that personality whom Yam, Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, and the Marutas. Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, Maruta, praise by chanting the transcendental hymns of the Vedas, Tuvanti Duvyastaver, with all their corollaries, Padakramas and Upanishad. Vede Sanga Padakrama Upanishadair, whom the chanters of the Samveda glorify. Gayanti Yam Samaga, whom the perfected yogis see within their minds after fixing themselves in meditation. Dhyana avastita tadgatena manasa pashyanti yam yogina, and whom, yasya, neither the devatas or demons can fathom. Antam, na antam, vidu. Vidu means they cannot understand. Sura asuragana devaya. Unto that Supreme Lord I offer my obeisances or respects. Tasmai nama. Tam tasmai nama. That part is not translated here. So even Brahma, did not realize the absolute truth by reading the Bhagavatam. And this is brought out in the second canto. Bhagavan Brahma Karshnena Trir Anvikshya Manishaya Tad Adhyavasat Kutasto Ratiratman Yato Bhavet. The great personality Brahma, Bhagavan Brahma. So this has two different translations. Now we are seeing Prabhupada's translation, I think. Vishwanath Chandra Thakur translates in a different way. The great personality Brahma, Bhagavan Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, Karsnena Manishaya, studied the Vedas 3 times, Trir Anviksha, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that Tad Adhyavasat, attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. Yato Kutasto Atma Ratir Bhavet. So, Brahmaji, when he first time studied the Vedas, he came to the conclusion that, the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas, which speaks about going to heaven, that is the goal of the Vedas. So that refers to Andam Tavam Pravishanti Yah Asambhutim Upasate. Then the next time when he studied the Vedas, he came to the conclusion that Gyan is the highest goal of the Vedas. So this is like Tato Bhuya Etamo Ya Sambhutim Upasate. Those who worship the Sambhuti also, they go to deeper darkness. So that is the second time. When the third time when he studied, that time he understood that Bhakti Yoga is the highest and ultimately developing Rati or attraction to the Lord. That is the highest. So even for Brahma, it took 3 readings of the Bhagavatam to come to this conclusion. So how many times we should read? And Vishwanath Chandra Thakur is giving from a different light, because ultimately, Nar Narayan, in the form of Narayan, did this pastime, and he gave this knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he said, Lord as a pastime studied and came to this conclusion. This is to set an example. So from that perspective, he translates the unchanging Lord, Kutastha Bhagavan, reviewed 3 times, Trir Anvikshaya, the Vedas, Brahma, completely Karsneya with his intelligence, Manishya, and determined that process, Tat Adhyavasat, which produces prema in the self. Ratir Atmo Tato Bhavet. The Supreme Lord himself reviewed the Vedas 3 times and concluded that attainment of prema is the highest perfection of religion. And Prabhupada had quoted, if you remember, stated that, in the end, he had stated that only the devotees by surrender, they can know the absolute truth. And only such devotees render service unto that absolute truth. So this is the verse Prabhupada is speaking. Athapi te dev padam bhujadvaya prasadaleshanugrihita evahi janati tattvam bhagavan mahimno nachane kopi charam vichinvan. My dear Lord Deva, if one Atapi is favored by even a slight trace of mercy, prasada leshanu grihita evahi, of your lotus feet, padam bhuja dvaya, he can understand the greatness of your personality. Janati tattvam bhagavan mahim. But those who speculate to understand the supreme personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Veda for many years. Na chanyo eko peep chiram vichinman. Vichinman means contemplation. Chiram for a long time if they keep on studying also. So this is from the Brahma's praise from the 10th canto 14th chapter. Okay. So now we'll come to the next theme, that is about demigod worship, which has been discussed here. So any questions up till now? Any questions, any clarifications? Two hands have been raised. Okay, so we'll take only two questions. Dwarkadish Prabhuji. Yes.
Prabhuji, if you said that Brahma took 3 times to read scriptures and understand the absolute truth is a person. Yeah. Even now, even Mayavadis.
Brahmaji studied the Bhagavatam, and first time when he studied, he came to a conclusion that the Karma Kanda, or attaining the heaven is the highest. Second time, the impersonal. Third time, ultimately understood Rati. Attaining prema for the Lord by Bhakti Yoga is the conclusion. So it took him 3 times. So that's like a pastime for us to also, realize that we should study the Bhagavatam and, come to this highest conclusion.
My question is that why the Lord created such a little bit ambiguity in this subject? Why he could not have in the straight away said, I am the absolute form, the Brahmaji is just my, my nirguna, or that why didn't he actually clearly stated? Purposefully or
Basically, we evolve through different levels of consciousness. And we will come to that when we discuss more about the demigod worship, then it will become more clear to you. Okay?
Okay.
Just hold on for them. Okay, Devahuti Kapil Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, in the second paragraph, I think we spoke about this, right? Such negative definitions lead one to create a concept that one's own, that one imagines absolute truth must be formless. So you quoted that applying Neti philosophy, one cannot come to the
Yes, correct.
concept.
Cannot come to understanding of the positive qualities and positive form of the Lord, because you're just negating the negative forms and negative qualities.
Right.
To the realization of the positive form and positive qualities.
Right. But how do we reconcile this, Prabhuji? I recollect reading in Nectar of Devotion where I think in somewhere in the first 10 chapters, Prabhupada has mentioned that rarely one can come to the conclusion or attain pure devotional service, even from that approach. So how can I understand or reconcile with that?
Yeah, that rarely means, Bahunam Janmanamante Gyanavan Mam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sahamatma Sudurlava. Bahunam Janmante, after many, many months, the Gyani, when he becomes Gyanvan, he'll realize that all pervading Vasudeva Sarvamiti is what? Is Krishna. Mam Prapadate, then he surrenders to the person Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakra Thakur in his purport gives a deeper understanding that Bahunam Janmanamante is when he comes in touch with a devotee. Because only a devotee can give this understanding. Otherwise, on his own, he cannot come to this understanding.
Okay.
So, Jnani, when he matures, and there is that need of the soul, because the soul is a person and it has personal form, personal qualities. So it will, when it is love and reciprocation, there have to be persons. You cannot do reciprocation with anything impersonal. You cannot reciprocate with the sky. It's all pervading. You cannot have a relationship with the sky and have reciprocations there. So it's a nature. So when you mature, even the Jnani, then Krishna, by the Lord seated in the heart, he will arrange one devotee to enlighten you, and then you will become a knower of Bhagavan and a lover of Bhagavan through the process of Bhakti Yoga. That's what it means.
Okay. So, Prabhuji, like all the devotees that we come in contact with is ordained by the Lord, right?
All the
devotees that we come into contact with in this particular lifetime is arranged by Krishna, right?
Yeah, based on our desire and based on our Sangha association, based on our aspirations, based on our level of consciousness, based on our adhikar, we get that kind of association. A drunkard will get attracted to another drunkards because of the swabhava and based on the aspirations, and based on their karma, so many factors work.
Okay.
So
Based
that
on impressions. Okay, got it. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. So let's take a last theme, and the next theme we will take in the next class. This is a quite elaborate subject. So who will read now? Paragraphs now. 4 to 7. Demigod worshippers stay in the dark material world. Andam tamam pravishanti ye asambhutim upasate. Asambhuti here means, those don't have independent existence. If you worship them, then you remain in this dark material existence. So who will read this? Paragraph 4, 5, 6, and yeah, till here it is. Okay, let us see. Let us go to first paragraph 4. Okay, who will read? Dwarkadish Prabhuji, yes. Mohan Rup Shah Prabhuji, many of the teachers are today absent in the group of the bhaktisashtri.
Yeah, Prabhuji, I have no idea.
Okay. All teachers have gone on a boycott or
Maybe local programs.
Okay. Yes, Dwarkadish Prabhuji. Paragraph 4.
In the Bhagavad Gita 7:20-23, it is said that only unintelligent, bewildered persons driven by a strong desire for sense gratification worship the demigods for the temporary relief of temporary problems. Since the living being is materially entangled, he has to be relieved from material bondage entirely to attain permanent relief on the spiritual plane, where eternal bliss, life, and knowledge exist. Sri Isopanisad therefore instructs that we should not seek temporary relief of our difficulties by worshipping the independent demigods who can bestow only temporary benefit.
By worshipping the dependent demigods.
Yes, by worshipping the dependent demigods who can bestow only temporary benefit. Rather, we must worship the absolute personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is all attractive and who can bestow upon us complete freedom from the material bondage by taking us back home, back to Godhead.
Okay, you need the 5th paragraph also.
It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:23 that the worshippers of the demigods can go to the planets of the demigods. The moon worshippers can go to the moon. The sun worshippers to the sun, etc. Modern scientists are now venturing to the moon with the help of rockets, but this is not really a new attempt. With their advanced consciousness, human beings are naturally inclined to travel in outer space and to reach other planets. either by spaceships, mystic powers, or demigod worship. In the Vedic scriptures, it is said that one can reach other planets by any one of these three ways, but the most common way is by worshipping the demigod presiding over a particular planet. In this way, one can reach the moon planet, the sun planet, and even Brahmaloka, the topmost planet in this universe. However, all planets in the material universe are temporary residences. The only permanent planets are the Vaikuntha Lokas. These are found in the spiritual sky where the personality of Godhead himself predominates. As Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, Abrahma bhuvana loga punar avartino arjuna mamupetya tu kaundeya punar janma na vidyade. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains my abode, O son of Kundi, never takes birth again.
You continue this paragraph also.
Sri Isopanisad points out that one who worships the demigods and attains to their material planets still remains in the darkest region of the universe. The whole universe is covered by the gigantic material elements. It is just like a coconut covered by a shell and half filled with water. Since its covering is airtight, the darkness within is dense, and therefore the sun and the moon are required for illumination. Outside the universe is the vast and unlimited Brahmajyoti expansion, which is filled with Vaikuntha Lokas. The biggest and highest planet in Brahmajyoti is Krishna Loka, or Goloka Vrindavana, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself resides. Lord Sri Krishna never leaves Krishna Loka. Although he dwells there with his eternal associates, he is omnipresent throughout the complete material and spiritual cosmic manifestations. This fact has already been explained in Mantra 4. The Lord is present everywhere, just like the sun, yet he is situated in one place, just as the sun is situated in its own undeviating orbit.
Okay.
Right? Continue, sir.
Continue, yeah, continue.
The problems of life cannot be solved simply by going to the moon planet or to some other planets above or below it. Therefore, Sri Isopanisad advises us not to bother with any destination within this dark material universe, but to try to get out of it and reach the effulgent kingdom of God. There are many pseudo worshippers who become religionists only for the sake of name and fame. Such pseudo religions do not wish to get out of this universe and reach the spiritual sky. They only want to maintain the status quo in the material world under the garb of worshipping the Lord. The atheists and the imbeciles lead such foolish pseudo religions into the darkest regions by preaching the cult of atheism. The atheists directly deny the existence of Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the impersonalists support the atheist by stressing of the impersonal aspect of Supreme Lord. Thus far, we have not come across any mantra in Sri Isopanisad in which Supreme Personality of Godhead is denied. It is said that he can run faster than anyone, and those who are planning to those who are running after other planets are certainly persons, and if the Lord can run faster than all of them, how can he be impersonal? The impersonal conception of the Supreme Lord is another form of ignorance arising from an imperfect conception of absolute truth.
Yes, yes. So here Prabhupada, Andam pravishanti, Andam tamo pravishanti, ye asambhuti upasate. He starts discussing this by quoting, 7:22-23. And, recently, this, the Chandrayaan was a big news, Prabhupada said, no, we cannot go there without worshipping the Devatas. It's not possible. But if you see Prabhupada's statement here, with advanced consciousness, human beings are naturally inclined to travel in outer space and to reach other planets, either by spaceships, one, mystic powers 2, or demigod worship. In the Vedic scriptures, it is said that one can reach other planets by any one of these 3 ways. But then Prabhupada says, but the most common way is by worshipping the demigod presiding over the particular planet. In this way, one can reach moon planet, sun planet, or even Brahmaloka. But ultimately, all these planets are part of this material world. The entire material world, in one sense, is dark region. Asatoma satgamo, tamasoma jyotirgamo. This entire material universe is tamaso, and jyoti is the Vaikuntha planets. So go towards the light, and come out of this darkness. So even if you come to the highest planets in the material world, you're still in the dark part of the material world. So that's why the right upasana is not upasana of devatas, but it is upasana of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is what, nicely Prabhupada is bringing out here. Another point here, just to mention in this context, because these 3 ways are mentioned, even if one reaches by spaceship or mystic powers, there is restriction in, actually where you can reach in these higher realms. Now, take for example that even, we as human beings can go to Himalayas, and especially the Saraswati river where it emanates. You can see that in Badrinath, and there is the Vyas Gufa. So we know that is more to do with the earthly realm. In fact, when Madhvacharya went along with his disciples, so Madhvacharya went to a different level of existence and realm where he actually met the personality Vyas and took instructions from him. And his disciples also did not have access. He only alone went. So like that, even, the means by which you go to a particular, level, in that existence you can go. You cannot go to the deeper levels of existence, even in those realms. That's my point, what I wanted to just bring. So let us see the important concepts in, this demigod worshippers stay in dark material world. Of course, Prabhupada purport is very, very clear. So this we have discussed now. Yeah. Okay. Now we'll go into a very important concept that if demigod worship leads to darkness, then why it is prescribed in the Vedas? So what is the principle behind demigod worship? Let us go into this discussion. Defining features of Vedic spirituality is that it is user-friendly. There is a means and a goal. In Abrahamic religions, there is one means and one goal. But Vedic spirituality is very user-friendly. In Vedic culture, different people have different psychophysical natures, so they can follow whatever means and goal they want. So there are 4 main sadhanas: Karma Kand, heaven; Jnana, Brahman; Yoga, Brahman; and Bhakti, Krishna. Sadhya are also different: Brahma, Vishnu, Durga, whichever destinations. Prabhupada is speaking about even going to demigod. So by this flexibility, different people at different levels of spiritual development are all accommodated. If you don't take up this way, then, you have no chance then. If you don't, worship Jesus, then you're eternally condemned to be in hell. You have no chance ever, So that's like, it's not accommodative. But the Vedic model is very, very accommodative. So Vedic culture extends the boundaries of the house of religion so far that even those who don't believe in one God as supreme, and so accommodate many more in the house of religion. So once Prabhupada was asked by his disciple, Prabhupada, especially in Christianity and Islam, they speak about one God, Allah, or Islam and Christianity, it is Jesus. He is, accepted as God. They don't have these so many demigods and all. But in the Vedic culture, there is this concept of many gods as demigods, and then there is a supreme god who is Krishna. So it's so confusing. So which is better, whether to worship that one god in the other religions, or this whole complication of so many demigods, semi-gods, so many different gods, and there is a supreme god Bhagwan. So which is better? Prabhupada was asked this question. So what is the answer Prabhupada gave? Anyone knows? Or what is your answer? We would like to hear. Anyone? Which is better? The Abrahamic religions, where there is only one god and there is no concept of demigods, or the Vedic model where there is multitude of demigods with capital God? Which is better? Anyone? Think about it. No one is raising hands. What happened? Which is better? Yes, Devhuti Kapil Prabhuji.
So, Prabhuji, like this is my understanding. Like every religion is a pathway. Like, of course, like process prescribed in the Vedas are better, but that doesn't mean other religion will not lead to the same goal. Say, for example, this may take 2 or 3 lifetimes. That may take 10 lifetimes. That's it.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Please don't type your question answers. Anyone else? Birendra Yadav had raised his hand. Which is better? Yes, Birendra Yadav Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu Dandapuna. Prabhu, I think it is better to follow the demigod worship, so because by following that they will be at least under the under the gambit of Veda, and someday they may come in contact with devotee, and they may
Yes,
they
Prabhupada
may
said,
attain the
yes,
progress. They may
yeah,
progress.
yeah, that's right. Prabhupada said, if they are following the path of Vedas, ultimately it's like they are, they are within the house of the Vedas, or they're within the kingdom. The other Abrahamic religions are that you're outside the kingdom. So ultimately the king is there inside the kingdom, and there are ministers. So these devatas are like ministers. If you take shelter of the ministers, the minister ultimately is worshipping the king. So one day you will come to the king. So following the path of Vedas is like entering inside the kingdom. So it is better you worship the demigod, because at least you are in the house of the Vedas, or at least you are inside the kingdom. But the other religions, he said, they are outside the kingdom. First, they have to enter inside. So that's what Prabhupada said, So this is, what I mean. So there is one manifestation as many. Swamsha and Vipinamsha. Now, this is the story of the prodigal son, which is, told in the Bible, how, a rich man's had 2 sons, and one of the sons, wanted the wealth of the father, and he wanted to stay separate from the father. And although the father did not want, but what to do, he was adamant. So he divided the wealth, and this son squandered all the wealth. His all friends looted him, and he turned into a beggar. And in fact, he did not have any food to eat, and ultimately he became a servant, taking care of the pigs. And that's how he was getting his bread. And then he started thinking, my father is so rich, and the servants who are serving my father, even they are better situated than me now serving, these pigs. I'm also servant, but I'm more miserable condition. But my father's servants, they are in better condition. So let me become a servant of my father and let me go back. So he decided to come back to the father. The moment father came to know, he lovingly, you know, uh, arranged a huge welcome, arranged a huge festival and, welcomed the son back. So this is told in the Bible as a parable, the story of the prodigal son. But Krishna, this story, if you extend, Krishna is a God who doesn't just welcome us back, but also strives multifariously to get us back. One such extraordinary effort is the system of demigod worship. So in this story, which we discussed briefly, when that son was miserable serving, under some master who was keeping pigs and, he was mistreated, he was, not taken care well. That was the story. But Krishna, what he does, he sends his minister. So the minister, the king, is the father who wants the son back. But because there is, strain in the relationship and the son might not directly like the father or the king approaching him, because he still maintains some kind of a ill feeling. So he sends his king, a minister, and the minister comes and tells him, oh, you are serving under this master who's taking care of the pigs and he's not keeping you properly. You come and serve. I'm, in a kingdom and I will take care of you. I'll give you a special residential place. I'll take care of your maintenance. You come and serve under me. So that's how, because he is maintaining a kind of a different attitude towards the king, but he starts serving the minister because that is congenial for him. And ultimately he sees that the minister also goes and serves the king. And ultimately then he will go to the king. So like that, Krishna extends himself, and that is through the system of demigod worship. Now, the system of demigod worship, this is, a very interesting thing. When in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the great sage Yajnavalkya is asked a critical question, Kati Deva, how many devas are there? His answer progresses from 3003, 303, 33, 6, 3, 2, and finally 1. And he answers as if there is no contradiction inherent in the various answers. So this was his answer. How many devas are there? 3000, 33, 333, 33, 6, 3, 2, and he says 1. So here, now extending that story of the prodigal son in the Vedic context, you are serving under some other landlord. And he's saying what? Say me God. I'm master. I'm maintaining you. So in one sense, I'm God. So landlords work, landlords have their peasants. So for the peasants, the landlord is only everything, They will tell Swamiji, not Swami sometimes, different terms they use. So these are semi-gods, say me God. The motive is what? Wealth. And the level is materialism. And the same son, the minister approaches. Here the son realizes a mistake and comes back to the father. But Krishna extends himself. Of course, he's not having a favorable attitude towards me, but let me send my king, my representative. In fact, Krishna sends his representative. So the minister of the king is a demigod. Again, the motive is wealth. This is karma kanda. Then he sees that the minister is also serving the king. He might come to the king. And he worships Krishna, but with motive of wealth. This is Sakama Bhakti. So ultimately, he should understand that, I have a relationship with my father. And, why should I worship the father with any motivation? Because ultimately, we have a loving relationship and everything which belongs to the father belongs to the son also. So when he comes to that level, that the object is the king and object of service is Krishna, but with the motive of love, then it is Shuddha bhakti, then it is a Shuddha bhakti. So why demigod worship? Service for the materially minded devotees. There is multi-level options for spiritual advancement according to one's modes based on tamaguna, rajaguna, satoguna. And this is expression of Krishna's ultimate non-enviousness and compassion to his children. So the Vedic system of multi-level worship bears testimony to a unique concern for the individuality of the worshipper and an unparalleled flexibility for the worshipable in making himself accessible. See, because if you see in the Abrahamic religions, if you don't worship Jesus, then you're eternally condemned to hell. But in the Vedic system, of course, you don't like me. Okay, then which minister you like? You like this minister? You can serve under this minister. So there's an unparalleled flexibility of the worshipable in making himself accessible. So Krishna expands his heart in the form of these unlimited devas, so that those who are in all different levels of modes, all can be somehow connected to him. And this is the unique concern of the individuality of the worshipper Krishna has. Now, what is the compassionate logic of demigod worship? Now, for that, is 60% score good or bad? Because it mentions, demigod worship is one level up, but you have to come to the worship of Supreme Lord. And that's why you should not stay in darkness, it is mentioned. So to understand that, let us take this example. Is 60% good or bad? For one capable of scoring 40%, it is excellent. For one capable of scoring 80%, it is undesirable. Suppose the father has 2 children and both, come with their mark sheet, and one has got 60%. And the father says, Shabash, very good, you have done very nice. I'm very, very proud of you. And the other son comes and he says, I have done 75%. And the father gives him a slap. Nonsense, rascal, what have you done? This is useless. The other son might think, hey, my other brother has scored 60 and is patted, and I've scored 75, and yet I'm scolded. But the other son, who is supposed to score 95, for him to score 75 is a lesser thing. So for one capable of scoring 80%, it is undesirable. For one capable of scoring 40%, it is excellent. So similarly, from the level of consciousness, from materialism to religious materialism, demigod worship is better. But from religious materialism, you have to go to real religion. Save pumsan paro dharma yato bhaktir adokshaje. If you don't do that and stay there, then it is not good. So is demigod worship good or bad? For atheist and materialist, it is recommended. But for serious spiritual seekers, it is discouraged. And that's why Krishna discourages in 7.23, Antavantu phalam tesham tad bhavat alpamedasam, like that. Now, let us see a few examples of those who are demigod worshippers, how, demigod worship can lead us to deviate from the actual goal. And we might realize that, ultimately this is the Veda Vada Rata Partha, Nanyata Sthiti Vadina. Heaven is the highest, and we might get stuck in the material world. But there are examples of how, through demigod worship, one realized the absolute truth. One is Vallabhacharya. It is mentioned in the Navdeep Dham Mahatmya that there were Brahmanas who used to 15 days worship Lord Shiva and 15 days Vishnu. And once this Brahmana, because he was very sincere and very sincerely offered worship of Lord Shiva gave him darshan and told him that actually, what benediction you want? I'm very pleased with you. Vallabhacharya, being intelligent, he said, whatever is very dear to you, please give me that. So then Lord Shiva, mentioned that, whatever dear to me is, my Ishtadev, and that is Lord Shri Krishna. you know. So that's how he led him to the worship of Lord Krishna. And then actually, Lord Shiva directed them that there, below banyan tree, there are the 4 Kumaras who are meditating. They will give you instructions. And Vallabhacharya, went to the 4 Kumaras, and then I think it is not Vallabhacharya. Not able to correct. It was Nimaditya, what I'm actually discussing this. Sorry, I forgot about this past time. I think it is Vallabhacharya who just was worshipping Shiva, and he directed him to, Vishnu. That's the story. I was actually, narrating from the Navdeep Brahmara, which refers to Nimaditya, who was, who met the 4 Kumaras. So this is one story. Second is Keshav Kashmiri. Keshav Kashmiri was a devout, worshipper of Saraswati. And by her blessings, he was able to conquer Digvijay Pandit. And ultimately went to, Navdeep. All the Navdeep Vasis fled. But Nimai, took up the challenge, and, he was defeated by Nimai. And then Keshav Kashmiri, that day night, he could not sleep because he had got a prediction that nobody would defeat him. So how this happened, he started worshipping and crying before Saraswati, and Saraswati came in his dream. How can you defeat my Lord? Who defeated you? He is my Lord. Oh, you have also a Lord. Yes, he's ultimately my Prabhu. So that's how Saraswati directed him to Krishna, and then, Keshav Kashmiri became a devotee of the Supreme Lord. And one more example is of Chandidas. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it comes, Vidyapati Jayadeva Chandidas Ragita Aswadena Ramananda Swarupa Sahita. The Lord used to read the books of Vidyapati, Jayadev, Chandidas, relishing their songs with his confidential associates like Sri Ramananda and Swarup Damodar. Now, Chandidas was a worshipper, devout worshipper of Durga or Kali. And every day he had a garden where he used to grow flowers and offer flowers to the worship of Chandi. And one day his brother was a pure devotee of Krishna. He was always having compassion on his brother that what he's caught up in demigod worship. And his brother just glanced at the garden, and one of the flowers, he offered mentally in his mind to Krishna. And Chandidas happened to pick that flower and go and offer it to, his worshipable Lord Chandi Devi. And the Devi spoke to him, "Oh, today you have got my Swami's Mahaprasad flower. I am very, very pleased with you." Chandidas was surprised. So many days, every day I get flower for you. You don't speak, but today you are speaking. He said, because this flower has been offered to Krishna, and I am the servant of Krishna. So today I am very pleased with you. So when Chandidas realizes, oh, your master is also Krishna, then today I'll also, start worshipping Krishna. And he became a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and he composed very devotional songs, especially of the Madhurya Ras, discussing Radha Krishna pastimes. And Mahaprabhu is to relish the songs of Vidyapati, Jayadev, and Chandi Das. So these are like, demigod worship can deviate us, but generally with the evolution of consciousness, demigod worship leads to the worship of Krishna. And these are the verses which Prabhupada has quoted. Kamasya ratagyana prapadyanti anya devata tam niyam astaya prakritya niyata swaya yo yam tanum bhaktya shraddhaya architum ichchati tasya achalam shraddham tam eva vidadamni aham sataya shraddhaya yuktas tasya aradhanam yihate labate chatata kaman mayeva vihitan hi tan. And Prabhupada quoted this last verse. Antavantu phalam tesham tad bhavat alpamedasam devan deva yajo yanti mad bhaktya yanti mamapi. So Prabhupada, in the purport, if you see, he is making a very important point that ultimately, the abodes of the demigods are material. And the relief sought is also from the temporary problems. Their abodes are temporary, the release also are short temporary. And the abodes, even if you go, Brahma Bhuvana Loka, Punaravritana Arjuna. And that's why Krishna is taking that highest level. Mam upetitu kante punarjanma navidite. So if you take birth in any of the planetary systems up till even Brahmalok, you have to take birth again. And that's why the highest goal is made clear by Krishna in this verse. And Prabhupada is giving a very, very, vision from a, Golok perspective. From a Golok perspective, each Upanishad, worship of demigods to their material planets, he remains in the darkest region. Prabhupada says the whole universe is covered with gigantic material elements, like a coconut covered by the shell and half filled with water. And it's airtight, it's dense dark, that's why sun and moon are required. And outside this, there is the unlimited Brahma Jyoti with unlimited spiritual planets, and the topmost spiritual planet, the capital of the Vaikuntha world, is the Golok Vrindavan. So that perspective Prabhupada is giving here. So that's why one should not worship the temporary demigods. That's the point Prabhupada is. Now, this paragraph is a transition with the discussion of the, Tata Bhuya Evatavamo Ye Sambhuti Upasate, which we will take in the next class. So any questions, any clarification anyone has about paragraphs 4 to 7 about demigod worship, which we discussed? Any questions, any clarifications? Okay, so we'll stop here. Shri Upanishad ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.